Are you ready to uncover your retirement solution? Learn more as Jeremy Keil and his guests guide you along the path of retirement and reveal the 5 steps you need to take to solve your retirement puzzle. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Retirement Revealed with Jeremy Keil. Today we're going to be talking about want. And this is actually, I believe, part 5 of a 5-part series. Is that right, Jeremy?
That's it. Well, it's actually part 4.
Oh, it's part 4 today. All right. Nice.
You got it. Yeah, we're still there. We're getting there.
All right. So we're covering want today. And this is, everybody wants something.
Yeah, you
it's
got
a pretty
it.
broad topic. What are we going to focus on
Very
today?
broad. We're talking about what do you want in the future,
All right.
and how are you going to get that. So a lot of times when you're younger, you're saving for retirement, you want to have some money in retirement, and where do you invest your money? More in stock market, long-term type of investments. And we figure just because you're retiring doesn't mean you don't want anything anymore. You don't want a future anymore. It's just opposite. Before you had a long-term, you had some growth investments, and when you hit retirement, you still need both of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, badly. Yeah, you've got to have that, or else there's you put yourself in risk. So interesting. All right. Well, wanting the future, I like that.
Yeah, and it's we try to boil this down, each of the 5 steps, into 5 different words, and we could have gone with long-term because we're talking about long-term money. Could have gone with growth, with the growth and the investments there. But we decided to call it want because you want money in the future. You don't have it yet. And if we emphasize that this is a want, then it emphasizes that it's not guaranteed. Right? Your money's not guaranteed to grow. It just probably will. And we need to set your investments up so when the market goes up or down, how are you going to react to that?
Yeah, I think this is perfect because we want security when we're older. Doesn't mean we're always going to have that. We want good health in the future, but it doesn't mean we're always going to have that. And so this falls in line with all of those, and I think it's a great topic for today.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at. And it's not a matter of the old days where you maybe invested in the stock market while you were working. Then you hit retirement, you took your pension, you took your Social Security, and you went and bought a bunch of CDs at the bank, and you started living on the interest rate. That's just not how it works anymore.
All right. So how does it work?
Well, it's such a low interest rate situation that you just can't rely on things that have interest, those bonds, those CDs. You can't rely on that for the long term. That's great for the short term, and that's what we think you need. That's why we called the third part of this 5-part series, What Do You Need? And once you've decided how much money you need to have set aside for that short run, you need to start looking at the long run. And when it comes to the long run, it's pretty well documented that the stock market will, outperform over time. It's been like that for ages. The problem is that it doesn't do it day to day, but the market happens to historically beat other investments over time. And we want to help you figure out how much risk do you take in the stock market and help you figure out which investments you look for.
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember having a conversation with one of the young men that I worked with that actually lived with my wife and I when we worked at Boys Town. And we were talking about investing and things. He had no concept of it, really. He had never been introduced to it. So we were just talking about it. And we both had an account at the local credit union, which is actually the Boys Town Credit Union. And I remember seeing the statement, and we were talking about it, that I believe on the savings, they were paying 0.1 or so point. I mean, it was under a percentage.
Yeah, very nice. Exactly.
Yeah, for under a percentage for interest. And his comment was, "Well, at least I'm making money if it's in there." And then I said, "But are you?" Right? And so then I had to explain inflation to him, and I had to explain some other things, and he was very upset at that. So
yeah, of course. And then taxes too.
Oh, absolutely. We didn't even touch taxes because he wasn't ready for that. So yes, I mean it's very, very poignant that there's got to be some sort of risk, and in that savings account there's very, very, very little risk, if any. But that means there's very, very little gain, if any. So
Well, that's why you save for the long term, is that you understand whatever you need to buy today is most likely going to cost you more in the future. And you have to find something that's probably going to keep up with those costs. And the stock market itself, investing in different ways there, is likely in the long run to help you out there. Well, when we're talking about investing, a lot of people think it matters which stocks they're buying, and they're looking for the next great stock. How can I double my money, 10x my money? Should I be trading back and forth every day, paying attention to it? And it's just something you can't control, in our opinion. You can't control what the stock market's doing, and it doesn't matter too much how much you're going to trade every day. If you spend a lot of time picking the best investment stock you can find, you just can't control that stuff. So we'd rather focus on some other things you can control.
Like what?
And the first one is risk. You can choose how much risk you want in the market. You're not beholden to exactly what the stock market's doing. And of course, what's interesting is when you dive into it, there's a lot more different stock markets out there. There's no just big thing called the stock market. So when you're investing, you need to spread your money out in different ways to make sure that you've got the right level of risk. And what's interesting about all that is a lot of people have more risk than they think they do.
Really?
We met someone, it's unfortunate. And I just read a story about this. They went to basically 100 different financial advisors, gave an example of here's the client, what would you propose in this situation? And their answers ranged from 100% stock to 0% stock. And so the unfortunate part of it is even when you go to a professional, you need to understand what their definition of risk is.
Seriously.
So for us, you got it. For us, our definition of risk is we just like to figure out basically on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the riskiest, how much risk are you willing to take? And then let's set up the portfolio to match that level. And when we come up with a score, let's say 6, you're wanting kind of in the middle, but a little bit more than that. If you happen to have a lot more than 60% in the stock market, that's not a 6 out of 10. That might be a 9 or 10 out of 10. So one thing you ought to do, it's amazing. And you got to talk to your advisor to make sure that they know how much risk you want to take, but you ought to know how much risk they're taking with your money. It's just unfortunate that a lot of advisors don't necessarily have the same definition of what risk is. And when we're looking at risk, our main definition is how much money do you have in the stock market versus how much money is out of the stock market. A lot of advisors think, well, these are good stocks, so it's very conservative. Really? They're still stocks. You can still lose some money. Doesn't matter if you call it good or not. You can still lose money in the stock market.
And we've seen good companies all of a sudden take a very bad turn. So that doesn't mean anything. There's no safety net there.
Yeah, if something was a good stock, if that is such a term, maybe it was at one point. Is it always going to be that way? You need to keep evaluating all this. And just one story we have on risk, and it's just an unfortunate story really, is we met somebody who was interested in working with us. She had an advisor for years upon years, and she told us that she was below average risk, just kind of below average. Maybe we would have thought 30, 40, 50% in the stock market when we're looking at that. And we looked at her portfolio, looked at her investments. We said, you've got 100% in the stock market.
Oh my gosh.
And you're using borrowed money. You're actually borrowing money in your account to buy more stocks. So on a scale of 1 to 10, she was like a 12 or 13. She wasn't the 3, 4, or 5 that we thought she ought to be, that she said she was, saying, I'm below average risk. I don't want to take on too much risk. He said, you are beyond the max. You've gone beyond because you're actually borrowing money to go out and buy stocks. And what's unfortunate about this is we met her in early 2008. So all she had was her end of year 2007 statement. We said, work with us or not, but you got to talk to your advisor because you are taking out so much risk. We followed up with her the year later, 2009, middle of 2009 now, got to meet with her again, and she had already lost over 80% of her money. It's just absolutely unfortunate. She thought she had conservative type investments, but you got to dig into it. Just because the advisor says this is conservative or this is good or safe, no such thing as a safe stock, right? Yeah. Conservative stock, I don't like those words. If you hear those words, I don't know, just dig deeper into it. That's a sad story.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. I mean, 80% of your entire retirement fund just gone. And I mean, it's not just, that was in a year. And we all know what happened in 08, 09. And it just, that really bothers me. Because that's, to me, and we can get into this in another podcast, and I think you've touched on it before, but that's not being a fiduciary, period. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, it's terrible. So you said earlier that, spreading your money out, right? And I know that there's a big word for that. You talked about diversifying before. Can you touch on that a bit for us?
Yeah, exactly. So the word is diversification, fancy word for spread things out, right? Tell you a story. My kids are 5 and 8, so they like to read Fancy Nancy, right? I don't know if anyone's read the Fancy Nancy books. Fancy Nancy, great kids book, but she likes to talk about big words, but then she explains it. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we're in our investment world, we use big words but don't explain it. So we're trying to explain a little bit here. So diversification is the fancy word for just spreading things out.
Okay.
It means don't put all your eggs in one basket. When you buy stocks, have different types of stocks. When you buy bonds, have different types of bonds. Sometimes you even have more than one bank account just because you have different reasons to have that. Diversify means spread things out. It's one of the ways that you can make sure you got the right level of risk. So step one with this is decide how much risk you're willing to take. And that number, if you're saying like a 6 out of 10, probably means you want about 60% in the stock market, maybe 40% in other areas like the bond market, the bank accounts, different things like that. But you're not done yet. You need to spread out, have different types of stocks, have different types of bonds. And one thing we wanted to remind people of too is a lot of times when you work at a company that has their own stock, you feel kind of beholden to that stock. It feels safe and it's at home, right? This is where I go to work every day. It's a safe stock. So we see it all the time. The people aren't well diversified. They don't have enough different types of stocks. And unfortunately, one of the biggest ways to hurt yourself here is when you have your job and your pension sitting around in a company you own a lot of stocks with. So one thing we very much encourage people to do is understand how much risk you're taking with the stock at the company you work with, and perhaps you ought to diversify. Find ways to diversify. Yeah, there's some tax things to think about as well, so there's a deeper story there. But if you've got a lot of money in the stock where you're working at, that's something that you may want to consider diversifying. We had somebody that was considering working with us, and they had 80% of their money in the stock of the company that they worked for. And we thought, this seemed, from what you're telling us, this is way too much. When they came through and talked about what they needed and what they're looking for, we thought, you got way too much stock right there. We encouraged them to sell it. The stock was in like the mid-50s was the price range. They said, well, when it gets to 60, we'll sell it. Never got to 60. Dropped all the way down below 10, and that was a lot of money for them to lose. We had another individual, same situation. Their stock was at $41.90. I said, well, when it hits 42, we'll sell it. I said, really? You're basing your whole retirement. This was all their money. All their money was in the stock where they worked at. On a dime. That's exactly what I said. We're basing this on a dime. Like, let's think this through a little bit. And unfortunately, same thing happened for them. The stock fell in half before they ended up selling it. It's just an unfortunate situation that people hold on to the things that they're familiar with. There's actually a scientific term called familiarity bias.
Yeah, there you go.
Behavior finance.
Yeah.
Yeah, people think it's familiar. Oh, that's the bank that I go to every day. Oh, that's where my grandpa worked. That doesn't mean you should have all your money just in that one stock. So diversifying means different types of stocks, different types of bonds. And one big danger is when you do have your employer stock, the stock where you work, a big portion of your investments.
Yeah, and I love the fact that the things that you teach on this podcast, and side note, I want to get into behavior finance with you at some point. Can we do a podcast on that?
Oh, I love it. I love behavior finance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so
just the idea of how are people actually behaving, which is different than what kind of the scientists think we ought to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to do a podcast on that for sure, because you and I could dive deep into probably a couple podcasts with that. But I love how what you teach on this podcast is really basic wisdom, right? I mean, you said it. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. You brought up a great point. My grandpa worked at that store, and so that feels safe. That feels good to me. Look, your grandpa had an old pickup truck too, and it wasn't a good classic one that could be worth lots of money. It was just an old pickup truck. Is that as reliable as you think it is? Would you want that for your car instead of your nice safe SUV or your nice luxury car? Or do you want to stick with your car because it's a bit more reliable? Just because it's familiar, like you said, doesn't mean it's safe. So no, that's great. Yeah, definitely. All right, what's next?
Well, the next thing you got to do is rebalancing. Diversifying is great, spread things out, but I bet you the next day, whatever percentages you put into the model, put into the way you want it to be set up, are probably going to be different. Because the whole point of diversifying is things go up and down at different points in time. And the way to get yourself back in alignment is called rebalancing. And to think of that, we just said spread out your funds, spread out, diversify your investments. Well, let's just pretend you didn't. Pretend you had 2 investments. That's all you had. 2 investments. Right. And you put half your money in one and half your money in the other one. Tomorrow, it probably won't be exactly 50-50 because one might have gone up, one might have gone down. The next month, almost the same thing. The next month, it keeps on changing to the point where you probably didn't start out, or you're probably not at the point where you've got 50-50 in those 2 investments. Maybe you're 60% in one and 40% in the other. That means your risk is different. Your diversification is different. You don't have what you signed up for. You need to get that back into alignment. And what you need to do is rebalance. And the way to rebalance, if you only have the 2 investments, is you take some profit from the one, and you go buy the other one that happens to be lower. And sometimes people have a tough time making that happen. The next step we think is doing this automatically. But the reason why people have a tough time making this happen is they see that profit, they say, well, it might keep on going. That's my good stock, right? People ask us a lot of time, what's the stock market doing these days? Or what's this moderate fund doing? And we like to say there is no such thing as doing in the stock market. It's what it did. There's only past tense in the stock market. There's no doing. Just because it did 8% doesn't mean it will do 8%. And when you've got that profit there, that's a good time to help you rebalance. And when you grab some of that profit, go buy the stuff that went down a little bit. You're buying it on sale. And it's a funny thing out here. We're in the Midwest, so we got it's Kohl's department stores. I don't know, you got Kohl's?
Oh, I do.
You, Eric?
Yep, we do.
Oh, yeah. My wife, my mother-in-law, my mom, everyone's so excited when they get that 30% off coupon coming in the mail from Kohl's because it's somewhat rare, right? You get the 15s, the 20%, but one day you get the 30% coupon, and you can't wait to go to Kohl's to go buy some stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, every so often, the stock market gives you a 30% off coupon, right? Parts of your portfolio, parts of your investments might be lower by that amount. And the only way to go get that sale is to go buy some more. And when you're rebalancing, you're taking some money off the top from the things that went up. You're using that money to go buy the things that happen to be lower. Perhaps it's on sale at the time. So hopefully you get a good deal out of it. But more importantly is when you're out of alignment, because one area went up and one area went down, it's bringing you back into alignment so that you're right there at the same risk level that you signed up for, that you want to be at. That's what rebalancing does for you.
So how often should somebody be rebalancing, really taking a look at that?
Yeah, so that's a tough question. A lot of times people do it quarterly. A lot of times people do it once per year. And there's been some studies done. I saw a study that said once every 18 months is the perfect time. I don't think there is a perfect time to do it. But every time you are reviewing your investments, once a year, twice a year, 4 times a year, whatever it is, you ought to look at what's up, what's down, how did this affect our risk? And if it moves your risk out of alignment, then rebalancing will bring your risk back into alignment. That's why a lot of times we recommend doing this automatically. We say that if you got the choice, whether you're going to buy something or sell something, or the advisor has that choice, a lot of times our human nature, this is that behavioral finance you talked about earlier that we'll have to get into another time, it kind of takes over and says, no, this stock that went up, it's going to keep on going. This stock that went down, it's going to keep on going down to zero. So I can't sell that stock at a profit. I can't buy that stock at a loss. When you're rebalancing and doing it automatically, you might not get the top point every time. You might not get the bottom price that you're buying it for every time. But doing that automatic rebalancing, whatever it's set for, is going to help you catch more wins by grabbing some profit and buy some more things that happen to be on sale than it would have happened otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing we really need to talk about too is you notice that this is the 4th step in the 5-step retirement process. A lot of advisors, a lot of clients think that should be the first step, right? Isn't that what financial planning is about? Is just trying to make more money? We don't think that's the answer. And that's because you can't control what the stock market's doing. You ought to control some of the things that you've got a lot of control over, And that's why first we started out with figuring out how much you're going to spend in retirement. Second, we help you make those decisions on Social Security, pension, these lifetime income areas that you get one shot at it. And from then on out, you can't change it. You got to focus on that next. And then we focus on how much money you need to be set aside. That's the third part of this process, is how much money do you need to have set aside out of the stock market. It's not until we've done all those areas, done all those things, that we start looking at your investments. And it's not a matter of picking the best stocks, or I'm a better investment advisor than the next one, or this portfolio does better than this other portfolio. It's about the things you can control. And you can control how much risk you have up and down in the stock market. That lady I talked about earlier, she had the control. She had the ability to look into her investments and see how much risk she had. She had the ability to talk with her advisor saying that these investments are out of line. So you got the ability to decide how much risk you might want to have in the market. You have the ability to spread things out. You have the ability to rebalance. And you have the ability to set it up automatically if you want to do it that way. So focus so much on the things that you can control. And we think investing is a very important piece of your retirement puzzle, but it's kind of down the line, right, after you've done some other things.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would say is you have the ability to get a second opinion, right? I mean, that's what the lady did. She came and spoke with you. Now she, it was kind of too late in her situation because of, that she was, already all the way in. But the other couple of examples that you gave were, well, I'm going to wait till it gets to $60. I'm going to wait till it hits $42. They got the second opinion. They chose not to take it. But everybody listening to this has the ability to get a second opinion. Again, it's funny because we're not going to dive into behavioral finance. However, my advisor, I'm familiar with my advisor, right? I've been with my advisor for 5 years, for 10 years. Yes, there's a relationship there. I'm not going to say that you don't make friends with your clients, because I know that you do. You have relationships with them. However, it is still business. If someone listening to this podcast is saying, I've been with my advisor for 10 years, I don't want to break off that relationship. I don't want to hurt his feelings or hurt her feelings. Here's the thing. Your retirement is incredibly important. There's nothing wrong with getting a second opinion. And I would love for them to do that, Jeremy. Can they do that with you in your office? I mean, I know the answer to that. Yes, they can. But how do they do that?
You got it. Give us a call, 262-333-8353, or check us out online. We're the Keil Financial Partners, KeilFP.com, KeilFP.com. Love to hear from you.
That'd be fantastic. What is the next podcast? What is the last one out of the 5?
Yeah, you got it. Well, hopefully everything we've talked about in series 1 through 4, the steps 1 through 4, hopefully it all goes well. You get all the money that you've ever wanted in retirement. But when that happens, you might have some money left over. And we like to say you either leave behind some money or you leave behind some bills. And we want to help you be prepared for either scenario, whether there'll be some money left over and how does that get passed along, or if perhaps there's some risks you have in your portfolio and in your planning that might cause some bills to be left behind for your spouse or your kids, whatever the situation is. So we'll be talking about estate planning and what different strategies go into that next time.
All right. I will look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. We'll talk soon.
All right. And thank you all for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast with Jeremy Keil. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Jeremy comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family, and I'd love for you to do that. That'd be great. Again, thanks so much for listening today. For everyone at Keil Financial Partners, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. Click on the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit retirement-revealed.com to learn more. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Keil Financial Partners. Keil Financial Partners does not provide legal, accounting, or tax advice. Consult your attorney or tax professional. Representatives have general knowledge of the Social Security tenets. For complete details on your situation, contact the Social Security Administration. Keil Financial Partners is a part of the Thrivent Advisor Network, a registered investment advisor. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.